Good afternoon and welcome to Inside Salem. I'm your host, Mike Allen. On this show, we try to go over the issues of happening in Salem and with a little more in-depth than what you read in the newspapers and behind the scenes and some of the different opinions of our panel. To make this possible, we assembled a panel of local experts, and today we are joined by Dominguez, former council at large, and Tom Furey, former school committee member, former council at large, and current planning board member. Well, I'll welcome the both of you.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to be here.
As you say, on this show, we talk about local politics, and it's the no presidential politics zone. We'll leave that to other people. But we will be talking about the state ballot questions, of which there are 5. And we'll get into that in a moment, but other topics we'll talk about. The city has gotten a couple of $500,000, grants one for Curtis Memorial Park and another for unemployment and underemployment training purposes. And the thing is, we have a new proposal in Salem that we're going to be giving a $500 grant per month to 100 people. We'll see what happens with that. I'm not sure where I stand on that one. But anyway, so let's go off to our first question. First question on the ballot. And this is not the question verbatim by any stretch of the imagination. It's just sort of the outline of the question. And the point of the question is to give the state auditor authority to review the state legislature to make sure they're following basically the law, all the regulations. The state auditor, Campbell?
No, I forgot his name. It's not Campbell. Campbell is the
right.
State auditor is.
Yeah, I've forgotten her name. I should have written it down. I'm terrible with names, as I've proven so many times on this show. She. Actually, it's not Campbell. She's the Attorney General, and this woman here was a member of the legislature.
Yeah.
And she was always trying to get, information out of the dark closet. Mm-hmm. And so this would give the authority because the state legislature is saying we can do what we want. And we have one of the least visible or opaque, transparent legislative processes in the country.
I believe that's a good thing that happened. If we as residents and businesses are entitled to be audited by the government, why not also the legislators who are actually dealing with the budget and other topics that had to do with the entire community. So in my end, humbly, I believe that's a good thing that happened. If we're going to be open and transparent, so everybody be in the same level, on the same page. That's my own opinion. Yeah. I don't know if these actions are going to be jeopardized or any other type of way of doing government. But on the other hand, I think that would be check and balance. That's what we need. How we check how the politician or people in government do if we don't have an auditor or mechanism to find out the way to do it. So I think it's a good way to do it. That's my.
Your history on the city council was always one of transparency.
Absolutely.
Your history in the kind of council was also one of transparency. Although I disagree with you more than I disagree with Domingo. Nonetheless, it was always transparent.
Respect.
Yeah.
In the past, we had Ted Bushko as our state auditor. He brought integrity, honesty, decency to the office. And he, as a judge, Bushko, he adopted one of my sons, integrity. And that's what the state auditor's position is. And I really believe we vote for the state auditor. The state auditor should have unrestricted access to all the agencies in the state, and especially the State House. That's where they make the laws, the legislation. Yeah. That's where the buck stops or the buck begins. Yeah. It's the law, the rules and regulations. So she's definitely right. She served in the state legislature. It's a monster. There's a lot of dead bodies and We don't know where they are.
Where they're buried,
But
yeah.
we have to investigate, and people want transparency. I always believed it on the city council,
Yeah.
and transparency on the state level, you got to have it. She's right. I'm voting yes to allow her that opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, the person's name is Diana Vithoglio. That's the
Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate
you-
that. Again,
Thank you.
I should write these down.
Absolutely.
They
And
think I'm terrible. at
I
names.
feel, when she was running, I had the opportunity to be in some of her events, and I as a current city councilor, I like to go to many political events to hear the platform, to see what exactly they mean to, and I think that was one of her points. She wanted to make sure that transparency be all level, not only at one level but at all level. And I think government is once again is entitled to be audited.
Yeah, people have lost sight of the fact that when this government was set up, the Constitution was put in place not for the government to oversee the people. It was to give the people the right to oversee the government.
I agree.
And everything in the government, they weren't concerned about the people. They were concerned about the government being out of control. And many people feel we're well past that point. But again, for what she's asking for is not only reasonable, I think it's the minimum, type of thing. But, okay, so,
It's like a Pandora's box, opening up a Pandora's box.
Yeah.
The state budget is a Pandora's box.
Yeah.
You don't know what's in there, but it has to be opened. Long overdue. Long
Yeah.
overdue.
I agree.
yeah. Okay, question 2, and again, this is not the way the question is worded. But it's basically, the question is, should the state get rid of MCAS? MCAS is a test that was introduced back with ed reform, back I think in '93, education reform in the state. It took a lot of power at that point in time out of the school committee hands. The school committee had ridiculous amount of power. They could hire and fire janitors and stuff like that. Way too much authority, and it put the power in the hand of the superintendent, gave them much more authority. And the school committee's main function was to be able to hire and fire the superintendent, set direction for the school department, etc. But they put it in this test, and this test basically is a test of proficiency. It's given multiple grades throughout your school, life, and and then in the 10th grade, starting in the 10th grade, now it counts. It's not just for information purposes only. It counts because you need to pass the math, English, and science MCAS to be able to earn a high school degree. Now, if you fail it as a sophomore, because after all you're taking the 10th grade, you can take it again as a junior, and you can take it again as a senior. So you can you have many opportunities. And the statistic I read somewhere, and I don't know where, was that less than 0.1% of students in Massachusetts do not graduate high school because of not passing the MCAS. So that the argument of the high stakes test that keeps people from graduating, and so therefore they drop out, I just think is a bit of a red herring. My own personal thing, but those are the stakes on it. Some people say we should be making a different type of test. We need to have a test because the purpose of this test is not only to notice whether or not the student has learned enough information to earn a diploma, but also whether or not the schools themselves are doing a good job teaching. Tom, you were a school teacher, as were you. You were a school teacher.
I was a school teacher for 40 years, and I loved it. I miss it. And my former boss is the Secretary of Education, Tutwiler. And Tutwiler is for MCAS and against overriding the MCAS on the ballot. So he's the Secretary of Education now under Governor Healy. And there's a very divided issue. The unions, as a member of the teachers union for 40 years, they're against the MCAS.
Right.
But I see it through a personal perspective. My 5 adopted sons, my 5 foster care sons, 3 passed it. 3 passed it. 2 didn't. The 2 that did not pass it dropped out long before their senior year. They said, useless. I won't be able to pass it. I'm not going to graduate.
Yeah.
They won't give me my diploma. They dropped out. They have no diploma. They never got a diploma. Routine said. So it does have a human face. It may be just 1% that don't graduate, but there's so many that know when they're sophomores and juniors, am I going to pass this test?
Yeah.
And I don't know whether I could pass the test. And see, as a teacher for 40 years, tests are not my forte. I don't like test routine. So I think a test is one good measurement. And you got to have them all the way through elementary, middle school, and high school. But should it be the sole barometer of getting a high school diploma? I have question mark. I see it through my 2 boys that should have gotten the opportunity to pass it, but they knew they didn't want to do it. One, in fact, ripped it up right in front of the teacher, says, I'm gone. I'm gone. It was kind of sad. I couldn't do anything.
I'm, in my personal belief that we need to move on about the time that we're living on. I think that at this point we've seen so many other countries in a very developing way on education. I think that we as a country need to find more modern tools to teach our children to make sure that they don't only pass, but they get exactly what is going on in the world. So my point in that is that I leave this to the professional, but I think that we need to make sure that we include the new generation involved in the decision making in that area specifically, because I think education in the United States need to be according to the time, to the modern time, and we need to move on. So if we use a tool 20, 40, something years ago, it's time for us to find another tool so we can apply to this time where we had new generation, people who need to know what's going on in some other places of the world. And that's not, NCAS, I think, it's already fulfill the time that need to be fulfilled. We need to find another tool to measure the educational system that allow our kids to move on.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion on that.
Now, the United States does not fare all that well compared to many other countries in their education thing. However, we spend more than any other country on education. So every time one of these studies says, oh, gee, we're falling behind, Denmark or whatever in terms of our educational and math skills or whatever, it always comes up, we need to spend more money. Well, money is not the answer, as evidenced by the fact that we spend more than every other country does on education with less results. Again, it's when I was growing up, we took standardized tests virtually every year of some sort.
Yep.
And it would just come back, oh, you're reading at a 4th grade level, you're reading at a 5th grade level, someone else is reading at a 2nd grade level. And so, there was always this thing where the student was constantly being told, that where their weak spots were and where their strengths were. And it was, it would show the teachers where they need to, emphasize, and it also would show the school department, wait a second, this particular teacher, no matter what class in each year, that person is in the bottom group, maybe this teacher needs to go back and get a little remedial help on their teaching skills. So, so it's, I just think it's important. Now, if we want to, do up a separate set of questions or a different set of questions or something like that, that's, to me, is not unreasonable, but I just think it has to be something that says either you know this or not. And if you don't know this, we can't, in good conscience, give you a diploma.
Domingo, were your children intimidated by the test?
Yeah, some of them. I have 7 kids, and few of them are very, very bright on taking tests. They have no issue, but I have 1 or 2 who actually have some difficulties to pass it. They did pass it, and thanks God they all have high school diploma, all my 7 kids. But some of them, struggle struggle, and they mentioned to me that it's hard for me to finish, but at the end of the day, they finish. But
Yeah. And again, we're hearing from two people who taught. I mean,
Yeah.
you taught for 40 years. You
3
taught-
years, for three
Yeah,
years.
just right. And I actually have a degree with an education minor, did student teaching, but decided not to go into the teaching profession. Went into
You went to the
business
school
and stuff.
committee too, so you actually.
And I was on the school committee,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Thank you.
we all three of us do have some experience dealing
We're
with
vested.
the education system.
Yeah.
Okay, next question here, number 3 is, should ride-hailing drivers, meaning Uber and Lyft, I think those are the only two that I know of, be allowed to unionize? And the argument is that because of the fact they're they're listed as independent contractors, and in effect prevents them from unionizing because they're not employees of anything in a way. The argument for that is everyone should be able to unionize. The argument against it is that no one's working. People are working when they want. It is, there's flexibility where someone can say, I only want to work on Saturday nights. You see so many vehicles drive by and they have a Uber thing and a Lyft thing. I mean, you're working for two competing companies, which you could not. It just seems to me if you're unionized, that wouldn't work. If you're an employee of Lyft, they're not going to say, wait a second, you can't go work for Uber. Where now they can, because if a fare comes up that Lyft says, "Oh, pick up someone at SATV in Salem and bring them to City Hall." Someone from Uber can pick on it or whatever, or if on the Lyft thing, someone from the Lyft on it. So it could be the same person.
Yeah, I see that as a win-win situation. That's our colleague Tom used to say in City Council all the time for the drivers, because that will help them be organized in a way that they can control that aspect that you mentioned. I mean, they had to be in one side only, and at the end of the day, it's going to benefit the consumers. It's going to benefit them to be concentrating one only company, and that will help because it's a very disorder. I mean, even though it's growing with no organization. Everybody can do Uber or Lyft, but at the end of the day, not everybody pay attention to the rules. Nobody really actually respect what need to be respect in a work that you do in order to make a living. They just very disorganized. So the unionizing thing help them organize, and I think in the long run they're going to be better. Okay. So in my end, I think it's better to have that.
Just want to interject something I meant to say when I was going on there, is that at this point in time, it's my understanding that a Uber or Lyft driver makes minimum of $32.50 an hour.
Yeah.
So, that's not too bad. I don't think
it's
already.
very lucrative. I hear a lot of people. I mean, I see friends who do Uber and Lyft both, and they say they make maybe $1,500 a week, which is a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a decent
great
salary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Particularly you don't even need to have a high school education for that. I mean, so it's not like you can be educated, but it's not a requirement. You just need to be able to get a license.
That's right.
For that type of thing.
But in a way, that $32 an hour was a way of preventing those members of Lyft, Uber, to go union. That was disenfranchising them. So don't go to a union movement. We're giving you $32.50 an hour, which is a good hour for anybody. Actually, $32.50 is a good wage. But that was, in a way, union busting. In a way.
Okay.
I wouldn't be here without the union movement. The union movement is down nationwide.
Yeah.
Just recently, I saw nurses at Salem Hospital picketing out in front of Salem Hospital, from union rights. Professionals need to know they have guaranteed rights for working conditions, hours, negotiations. I served in negotiation committees. You probably did too over on the school committee, doing union benefits and so on there, and budgets and contracts.
Actually, that was one of the committees I was not on.
You don't like to avoid it.
Yeah, I requested, finance, because that's numbers in my
Indeed,
strength. And Jim, who's normally here, Jim Fleming, he would typically request negotiation because
Yes.
he's had that background in there, and that was not a good background for me. So, I didn't need to be on it. Other people requested it, so I actually was not on negotiation. But of course, once the, negotiating committee, they bring it to the committee of the whole. So at that point in time, I would be involved in it. But we had settled just before my getting on there, and there was no other,
Strike.
contract. There was no contentious contract or whatever, when I was on there.
But you see the union movement making strides into, say, Starbucks and other businesses to try to build up the union movement there, because the rights and responsibilities, hours, conditions are so important for the livelihood, the health of the benefits and so on of the workers. So I see the union movement is a right to move into the Lyft and Uber. And it's an option. The Lyft and Uber workers do not have to go union if they don't want to.
Okay.
So they have that option of not going into a union. The union will try very hard to get them in, but
Right.
if they want no, they'll vote no.
Right,
I think they should have that opportunity of voting for it and being educated what the union can do or not do for them, and whether $32 an hour is not bad.
Okay. Question number 4. Should we legalize psychedelic mushrooms, man? But yeah, here it is. The question is, should it be legal? And you hear medical things where they say, people suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder from the military, that it helps them. But this is sort of the camel's nose under the tent to get it legalized as for recreational use, much like was what happened with marijuana. And is that where we need to go? I don't have a problem with any doctor prescribing any thing that they feel is going to help someone's health, but I'm just not sure about this.
I'm in the same position like you. I just, my concern is control, especially for the underage. That sometimes when we wanted to solve one situation, we forgot about the most vulnerable one, who are our children. So we need to make sure that we legalize it for the medical reason, which I think is necessary. But at the other hand, we need to make sure that we control in a way that this don't get in the hand of any minor, so we can get some addiction.
Yeah.
So that's a very thin line that I'm always concerned about.
There were, before it was legalized recreational, there were doctors set up, basically, script. There was one not far from my store that I had that just said, medical marijuana doctor, come in, and this is, clearly the doctor did their business, basically finding loopholes to get someone to be legal to buy medical marijuana. And I just see the same thing sort of happening here.
Yeah.
Tom, I'm going to have you weigh in a moment on this, but I just want to point out that the state of Oregon, I think it was, legalized pretty much all drugs, like 3 or 4 years ago. And they're having so much problems, they're starting to make them illegal again. So I think that's sort of, something to be aware of when you're voting for this thing. Tom?
You look on 2 instances of famous celebrities, Elvis Presley and the main lead of Friends, the TV series Friends, both were oversubscribed by their doctors and died because of the subscription of drugs to Elvis Presley, who died of overdose, and the main lead of Friends. It was very sad. Doctors can abuse that because of the money situation.
Right, yeah.
But when you look at post-traumatic syndrome for veterans coming back from war, Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, Jim served in Vietnam, and even my 4 or 5 sons, of the 5 of them, they were PTSD to the emotional circumstances they grew up in, post-traumatic syndrome. For even kids, they had it.
Right, yeah.
From the abuse they received in their early years. So they took Adderall over the years, certain medications over the years. And now marijuana if they can get it over the counter, they're free, buy. So this opportunity for mushrooms may be an opportunity for them to kill the pain, to kill the residual effects of past, whether it's a war veteran, Iraq, or whether it's one of my sons going through trauma with the past series. So I believe every opportunity to relieve pain in a proper way, if we don't have medical doctors like the doctor and Friends and the doctor for Elvis Presley taking advantage, that was criminal.
Yeah,
And they were never indicted, really. Elvis Presley's doctor never got indicted.
Right, and did what's his name, Matthew Perry?
Matthew Perry.
Yeah. So did his doctor get indicted?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Fortunately.
Yeah,
Long overdue.
I don't usually follow celebrity news too much.
Very sad, very sad.
Yeah, yeah.
Abuse of power.
Yeah. Okay. The last of the 5 questions. Should tip workers get minimum wage? Currently, what is this? Minimum wage in Massachusetts, $15 an hour. And tipped employees, I think they get $6.75 an hour because they also get tips. And the place they work for must guarantee that they get to the $15 an hour, so they can't pay them $6.75 and the person makes $2 an hour for tips and they say, oh, that's fine. No, so that means, so no one who's getting that lower wage is going to not be making at least the state minimum wage of $15 an hour, which, by the way, is almost twice the federal level of minimum wage. So the thing is that it seems like this is a solution in search of a question, because it seems like all the restaurant workers groups are opposed to this question. So this is not being driven by the waiters and waitresses saying we want to be on a level playing field. And they've been coming out against it. They said, if this passes, we believe we're going to make less money because the patrons are going to say, I've been tipping this person because the person's making below minimum wage. Now they're making minimum wage, I'm going to tip them less. And they're worried they're going to make less money for it. That's the way I interpret this question.
The Salem Board of Health was
Yeah.
way ahead of their time back during, I think it was the Usage administration. Joanne Scott was the chairperson of the Board of Health. And they were the first Board of Health to say no smoking in local restaurants in Salem. Salem.
Yeah.
2 members of the city council got a petition on the ballot, a non-binding petition, saying should smoking be allowed in restaurants, and it was overturned. They went along with the Board of Health. The voters did.
Yeah.
And I went to many, many restaurants. I was the only city councilor to stand up for the Board of Health.
Right.
Because the members of the Board of Health were telling me, I need my husband to protect me getting out of the meetings. I need someone to guard me. It was so emotional, banning smoking.
Yeah.
But if you look back now, and they all the waitresses and waiters in Veg Sandwich Shop and all the local restaurants would say, oh, we're going to be killed, but tips, we're not going to be able to survive. I think in the long run, the $15 base, the minimum wage they'll be getting over a period of time, is going to be proactive for them. And people who want to tip will tip. Even now, since COVID, a lot of people don't even tip.
Mm-hmm.
They let that waitress get $6.75, but that male waitress, a female waitress, get $6.75. They can't live on that. So a lot of people are not even tipping now. So I think in the long run, and that's the way I think your role was. You were at large, thinking of the whole city. Yeah. I'm at large. You were at large too for the school committee. At large, you have to think of the whole city. What is the benefit for the city? So I believe 4 or 5 years down the line, if they get the $15 minimum wage and tips on top of that, I think they'll be happier than they are now.
I'm with you on that. In the event that we need to make sure that tipping is voluntary. It's not really mandatory. No one feel generosity than everyone. Some people might be a little bit, on the fence when it comes to tipping. So, but in the end of the day, we need to make sure that worker secure the base so they can continue to succeed. And I think in the long run, it's going to be better because voluntarily, some people are going to tip, but some other people might not tip no matter what. So, but they have the secure or a salary that they're going to have every week no matter what. So I'm doing that.
But Ted Kennedy, who passed away about 15 years ago in August, Senator Kennedy, he was the one who got the minimum wage at $7.25. It hasn't been changed since. No one can live on $7.25.
That's true, but the thing is this, this is a total different subject than that, because in other words, no waitress or waiter is making less than $15 an hour. Because even though they're getting paid $7.75, I think it is, from
Yes.
their employer, if they're not making or $6.75, I think it is.
Yes.
If they're not making the $15 an hour, the employer must make up that difference. So that's built in. But the thing is this: minimum wage is not, in states like Massachusetts, which has a very high minimum wage, it prices out starting things. We had someone up in our Ipswich store and started for us at through a program below minimum wage, and ended up working for us for 30 years and made well more than minimum wage ultimately, with benefits and things like that, but never would have. It was a little challenged. Had some challenge, disability type challenges, and he would never got to start if we had to pay the minimum wage, but because we were able to take him on at a lower rate because he was not capable of doing the work that was necessary for the job. Eventually, he learned it and became a valuable member of the crew, but we would never have hired him. So so the thing is this: that minimum wage is really for, I hired many 14-year-olds where we'd have to get work permits from the city, to hire them, and again they learned. Peg Voss, former school committee member, I hired her son. And at one point in time, we were holding signs. She was holding a sign for someone else, and I was holding a sign for myself. And she said, "Oh, my son learned so much working for you. It was really great. You did this and did that, and he just learned so much responsibility and all that type of thing." And again, the reason why that he could get that was because. I paid him minimum wage, but I paid him minimum wage. And again, he wasn't raising a family; he was a high school student, but it gave him skills that he could move up the ladder to. And that's typically the thing with minimum wage. People who start at minimum wage, most of them are at minimum wage for a very minimal amount or minimal time. They start at minimum wage, learn skills, and they move up the ladder. I mean, there are probably some that don't learn any skills, but they would, at a certain point in time, they become non-employable. So I'm just not sure about that.
No, I'm very clear on what you just mentioned. I think that everyone had to start at one point and move on, especially with the salary. But on the other hand, I think many of the waiters and men and women, they are already, even some of them are young. They are maybe starting a family where they have eventually to bring home the living, not only for them, but to support their family. So that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Who are the employee that we get into that industry? Are the youngest one at college, or are the one that already have a family who need to support their family? So, and that's, I think the case is in this point is that many of the waiters that we see in restaurant and in other type of food industry are not starting off. They probably be in the middle line where they moving on. They probably have a second job because they had to support the family, and they had to get another job to also bring food to the table.
Okay.
So
many of these restaurants in Salem depend on young people, single, and they have to. They're paying high rents. They have to double up 2 or 3 to an apartment just to survive. And this is a way, hopefully, they can get out of that black hole and survive economically in a fair way, be competitive.
Yeah, but the point, I mean, we see so many mid-price family restaurants declaring Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Yes. And that's because the consumers aren't going there now because it's too expensive. So I'm just not sure, like California just passed a a law 6 months ago, I think it went into effect January 1st or something like that, where fast food workers would get $20 an hour. Well, that's all well and good, except the fact that right now there's like 20% less fast food workers because the companies closed down, moved their franchises out, consolidated franchises, cut back on employees. You see McDonald's now has a kiosk where you key in your meal, you do everything on apps. So they're doing that because even though it's very expensive to put this piece of equipment in, it doesn't call out sick, and it's never going to ask for a raise. Once you put it in, you own it, and that's it. You'll probably have to do a little bit of maintenance upgrade, and so I think people are going to price themselves out of the market. I mean, that's why the auto industry, the auto industry declined in the 70s because we were getting in cars from other countries because our cars were so expensive because of the high amount of benefits and stuff like that, and the work week was very small. There was very little demand on quality control and all these type of things because the union had gotten so powerful, and so the thing is this: they ended up putting many of their workers out of work because of it.
Yeah, that's
so
you make a good point
worry
there.
about that. That's sort of the other side, the flip side of it.
Yeah, you make a good point. I think need to be taken into consideration too that the industry can be hurt by putting too much into the owner of the restaurant, especially a small restaurant. So that's the question that need to be analyzed from both perspective, I think, and try to find a better solution for both.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. On to that's the end of our segment on Massachusetts ballot questions. Now we're going to move on to our local things. First up is officials object to Salem Academy's application for expansion. They objected to it on the basis of that they didn't provide proper public meeting to determine whether or not they were going to go forward with this. Any thoughts on that, Tom?
Charter schools are an opportunity for people who are disenfranchised, who want a quality education, go to a charter school. And in the case of the Salem Charter School, it's through the taxes of Salem, through the school committee, and deducting that budget to go over to the charter school. The charter school doesn't have to pass the MCAS, and the test that we're talking about in the early stages. And it's a good alternative. I believe in alternatives there. But should we be punished as a local like Salem? Salem's going to get $3 to $5 million cut via charter schools for reimbursement for them to increase their enrollment. Lynn, $24 million. Should we be punished because of COVID? Kids going to school in COVID years, a kindergarten kid suffering the anxiety, the stress of being at home, not being in education with their peers. That whole generation, the kindergarten kids that went through COVID all the way through high school, were affected. It's a lost generation, a lost years of education. And we're being punished, public schools, because we didn't go up in our SAT MCAS course situation. So we got punished because of COVID, like Hurricane Helene that hit Florida and the Gulf Coast. The COVID did the same thing to public schools. Our schools went way down.
But our schools in Salem were down already.
Yes, they were.
Otherwise, the school wouldn't have been existent in the first place. So the thing is this. The question is this: who should be punished? Should the students be punished by being put into a substandard school system where they're not getting a proper education? And Salem has proved itself to be a substandard school system. We're amongst the most high-priced school per students schools systems in the state, and we are in the bottom 10, 15%. So at what point in time, is it the government's money, is it the school department's money, or is it the students' money, in effect? Now, when I was on the school committee, I was not very popular for being a supporter of charter schools, which was just starting up at that time, with some of my fellow school committee members, actually, not so much the public, but some of my fellow school committee members were quite dismayed with my position on that. And my argument was the money should follow the student. Now, if you want to say to me, okay, fine, it's, $18,000 a year for the public student in Salem, and you want to make it such that they get, 85%, so they say $15,000, transferred over, where it's a little less because whatever justification you can have for it, then, I can go with that. But again, it just seems like you're talking about punishing the school system. I'm more concerned about the student. We're punishing the student by forcing them to stay in a system that is, in a school system that is not optimal.
I completely agree with that position that you have, Mike. And I also think we as a taxpayer wanted to see the best education for our children, especially when we have children in the system. And I think that the public school in some cases have failed in that regard, because I think many of the instances the public school have dropped down the level of education that our kids deserve. And I think that having a second choice, having a second alternative is always better than don't having nothing. I think that we need to find a way where we can fit the public school, but at the end of the day also have the alternative, so we can both have choices and our kids have the best education that they deserve.
Yeah, and then that's the key thing to me. Now, I have indicated in the past I'm in favor of vouchers, which are even more outside my fellow school committee members' zone of comfort than even charter schools, where you basically have a student and they get in effect a voucher that they can use to any school, whether it's a vocational school, even a parochial school, and they can use it, and it would be less than what is available to the public school system, but it would allow parents to say, okay, fine, I can't afford to spend $10,000 to send my kids to a private school, but I can afford to spend $2,000. So something like that. So because it's really not about the teachers union, the people who work in the office in the school department, or the city of Salem employees. It's really about the students. That's the key thing. That was always my thing when I was on the school committee. I looked into privatizing the food system, and I didn't do that to throw people out of work or to be a bad guy. I did it because I thought it would be if we could decrease the cost of providing a healthy lunch, then it would allow us to spend more money on classroom learning. I was opposed to having paraprofessionals work 21 hours a week rather than 19 hours a week, so that they would collect almost as much in benefits as they would in salary. So it's like, if you want to make a 40-hour a week or a 35-hour a week paraprofessional, that's fine with me. But that 21-hour thing, there were people that were just 21 hours, and they were collecting, their salary was like $13,000. This is again 20 years ago, and their health insurance bill and their retirement thing, it was coming to almost that amount as well. So we were saying we were hiring this person for $13,000. No, we're hiring them for $25,000 to do to be an extra,
Help.
Some of them were glorified hall monitors. So the thing is this: it's about what is the best financial. The finances should be best for the student learning, not for anything else. That's the key thing.
When COVID broke out, the disparity, the injustice between technology and those students who couldn't afford the technology, the Salem School Committee had to provide a laptop a computer to every single child in the school system. And many of them didn't even have access to the internet. So we had to provide internet services for them. So there's a gap, a real gap. I saw it through my two sons that dropped out before the MCAS. One test, they dropped out for that. And you see the young people being affected. Mental health, counseling now, it's all catching up. The COVID virus, the bad decision making.
Yeah, but the bad decision making happened to be in states that were run by Democrats, basically, because in many states they closed down for, closed down for that 3-month period starting in March of 2020, but when September of 2020 rolled around, they went back to school. And some school systems were shut down for a year and a half. We did remote learning for a year and a half. And that is on the governors and the hierarchy of those states. Now, we had a Republican governor, although many people refer to him as a Republican and name owner, hence Rhino. But we were one of those states that closed down for a long period of time. There were many states that did not do that, and they did not have worse health outcomes. So it was not a matter about health, and we're finding out now that much of what they told us about wearing masks and distancing and stuff was complete guesswork, and much of it turned out not to be true. But if you questioned it, you were kicked off the internet, basically. So
I would like to see the charter school in Salem tested, those kids tested after COVID, and see if their test went down, their private little test type thing. They're going to get an economic boom, more enrollment in Salem, more enrollment in Lynn, because we went down in Salem, and Lynn went down too. We got punished. Same type populations, diversity, and so on. So they're going to be, they're not tested on the same threshold that the public schools are. I think the best investment for any of us is to invest in our schools. They are good schools. You are part of it. Good buildings. A brand new high school coming online, a brand new middle school coming online in Salem itself, and Jim was part of it there, long and behold. Good schools. The students are the challenging part, really. The parents are the challenging part to make sure that given attendance is there, their school priorities is there, education is there. You can see now today a lot of kids are not going to school. They're on all types of excuses.
Now, so charter schools do not need to take MCAS.
No. Bishop Fenwick.
I know that. Well, I know that Bishop Fenwick and private schools don't, because they have their own graduation. So I am surprised that the charter schools do not need to do it. So did the charter school open up earlier than the Salem Public School?
I don't know whether the Salem, but I think they were in lockstep with the Salem school system. They do most lockstep with holidays and other times to go along with the schedule and so on. So I think they went along with Salem.
So they did remote learning
they opened
as
up
well.
at the same time as Salem did. Yes.
I'm listening to you guys, and I think I recall having one of my kids in charter school before the COVID, I think, and the experience that we had as a parent was very different than that we have in public school in terms of one-on-one interaction with teachers and the system that they provide. The educational for my kids kind of play better than in a bigger system public school. And my daughter, I'll tell you that one of my daughter, she loved the way it was taught in charter school. The only thing at that point when she was there was no gym, and she used to play she used to play basketball, and she was missing that part, so she had to go back to the public school again. But my point is that I think back to the original conversation we had of the alternative. That's alternative. In my own experience, I think that it's good to have, and I also agree 100% on what you're saying. We need to follow the money, and the money need to be where our kids need to have the education.
It's again, the point of the public school system is not to, employ people. It's to educate children. And that's their only task, to educate the children.
All three of us are dressed in a shirt and tie, each of us today. I would love the charter schools, Salem public schools, to have a uniform. Your child had a uniform. They dress in a certain code, you understand it, and so on. So the public schools are lacking in that little discipline of a uniform. Here we are, the three of us. Domingo's son was in a uniform.
Oh yeah.
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 I believe in that. So public schools have a lot to learn from charter schools too.
Yeah, I would have been one of those people who were fighting against the uniform. But that, just the truth. I mean, I would have been the maverick there fighting it and pushing everything. I know at St. John's Prep, I had a buddy of mine, back when I was in high school, who went to St. John's Prep, and they had a school uniform.
Yes.
And basically, they used to talk about how stinky their clothes were because they would never wash them. They would just wear the same uniform day in and day out, and it would be like, I guess it would get quite ripe.
Yeah, but I went to school in my country,
Yeah.
Dominican Republic, and we had uniform.
Yeah.
And what we used to do is we used to have 2 or 3 uniform for the week. When one was dirty, we watched that one and put a new one. And the school that I went through, they had different type of uniform for different professional that you earn out on the high school level. We had the commercial group. There's another one for nurse,
Yeah.
another one for carpenter, and every one of them had different type of uniform. And I used to have 3 or 4 uniforms. So the experience for me is good. One of my kids had it at one point, and I think that from economical wise, me as a parent, it's a lot of saving money because you don't have to buy every year new clothes, very expensive clothes, especially now and then, shoes and everything. So they have only one, and that's it.
Right. Yeah. They don't have
You
to.
save
They
a lot
don't
of
have to
money.
have the prestige outfits and.
But your point is very well understood. I mean, that some people don't watch.
Yeah, as I say, I was always fighting against authority. I guess I still am in a way. Always
But
fighting.
also another aspect that's very important is giving the kids discipline.
Yeah.
Giving you the discipline to have your uniform. But I remember back on the days, there was a class that teach you how to be hygiene, how you project yourself in a way that you look good, that you have a haircut, that you choose shine, and your uniform need to be very, very nice. So that help, just like the military, help you to have some type of discipline.
Yeah. Now the thing is this: I actually agree that the uniform is a plus.
Yeah.
I just but I would be disingenuous to to support it wholeheartedly when I know that I would have fought against it tooth and nail. So it's but yeah, I mean it does bring around that type of thing. Okay. We were talking about the first ballot question, to give the auditor the authority to review the state legislature. Well, Massachusetts ranked last in legislative competitiveness, which means that the current people who are elected to the legislature right now, and they're coming up for election in 2 weeks, thereabouts, are going to be the same people they're going to be there next year. Many people run unopposed. Very few people have a primary opponent. And then many of them, and it's like, like say Manny Cruz.
Yeah.
I mean, he's running as a Democrat in Salem. I'm not sure if there's a Republican on the ballot. No Republican on the ballot, because the Republicans say, "Why am I going to spend this money? I'm not going to. I have no shot at getting elected." So it's like I can put my name on there for vanity's sake, like when you publish your own book and you convince your friends and your relatives to buy it from you and say, "Oh, I'm a published author." But that's the same thing. It's like.
I think Senator
there's so
Lovelace
many
is
that-
unopposed too.
She's unopposed?
She had an opponent on the Republican side. Yeah, I had the opportunity to run for state rep, as you mean.
Yeah,
The last
yeah.
election against Manny Cruz.
Yeah.
Who actually won.
Yeah, it was in the primary. But
Yeah, and I really understand your point. And one of the reasons I'm not running this time again is because I think it's already made up. I think that in this case, Manny Cruz had the advantage. He's been in the system for many years. He's doing a great job. I mean, I'm glad that he's there in my own personal view. But money-wise and two-party system where actually in this area, mainly the Democrat, which I'm Democrat myself, had the advantage. And you see no opposition on the Republican side, because at the end of the day, it's going to be very clear that the Democrat had the advantage. And
right, and the thing is this, I mean, if you ran against him, you're going to have to raise money, and that's going to be a very difficult thing. A lot of people are not going to want to give you money because they're going to say, well, I don't want to show up on a thing that shows that I didn't support Manny Cruz because he's most likely going to get elected. And everyone's going to toss money at him, and because they're looking to knock on his door and say, gee, this piece of legislation's come out. And there's nothing wrong with that. In other words, obviously you can't sell your influence, but if you have a supporter and they say to you, look into this circumstance here, here's what my expertise says. Consider that when you're voting on this, or putting it in committee or whatever. So it breaks down to that it's just very, very difficult to knock off an incumbent, and particularly in a
Salem had a
state.
clear choice in that last election. You had Domingo and Manny. That's the first time in a long, long time we've had competition on the state. In the primary, a low voter turnout.
Yeah.
So it was you were going against the wind.
Well, the previous time was 20 years ago, Keenan against Lovely.
That's right.
Yeah, and because Mike Ruane had run, and he had basically none. He's had some token people throw their name in the
And you
hat.
see that on Paul Tucker. He held the seat for long because no opposition appeared to be every election time. But I'm
sorry to interrupt. Yeah. We're going to be turning to black in a moment here. And I just want to remind people, election is Tuesday, November 5th.
Thank you.
Go out and vote.
Thank you.
Very important.
Okay,
Very
that's
important.
Okay.
No, my point was that just to make more strong your comments, that even when you get into office, it's hard to be an incumbent because the incumbent have all the advantage. They had 2 years, even though they don't campaign, but they had 2 years to make connection, to make everything going through. And whoever come and try to beat those, it's going to be hard to beat it.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, you've run.
Yeah, I've run
multiple times. Yeah. You've only lost once, right?
I lost twice for school committee. I ran a ward race situation, so I've lost. It's no fun losing. Sincerely. Democracy in action.
And I've lost more times than I can count. I don't even remember.
Before we go out of the air, I want to say we wanted to send our love to our friend Dizzy, who actually had a small accident, and she might be now at home. But our love and regard out to her. We're praying for her, and we just say that how much we love her. That's something that I wanted to say.
We're sure to get well soon.
Yes.
But okay.
We're a good team. We're a good team.
Yeah. The state received. The state gave us $500,000. Us meaning the city of Salem, not the three of us. Too bad. $500,000 or $500,000 for Curtis Memorial Park, and I don't know where that is. Where is Curtis Memorial Park?
Curtis Memorial Park. To be honest with you, I'm blank right now. I don't know.
Okay.
I apologize myself for that. So many
Okay,
names.
so
I apologize.
okay, so I don't feel so bad. I don't.
Senior moment.
Yeah, I don't feel so bad. So maybe it's one of those parks like it has a name on it, and no one ever calls it that. Like
Salem has 26 premier parks, and it's a wonderful opportunity for families and kids to take advantage of our parks all year round. For, cross country.
Just like the Mystic Roman Bridge, it was changed to the Tobin Bridge. And no one ever called it the Tobin Bridge. It took like 30 years for it to finally be called Tobin Bridge. Everyone called it the Mystic River Bridge. So it's just maybe the same thing with this type of thing.
Our parks are our jewels. Winter Island all the way through Salem Willows to Common.
Yeah.
They've been fixed up over the years.
Yeah.
Us through the city council.
That's right.
Yeah.